and welcome to the Doofcast, the official variety podcast of doofmedia.com. My name is Scott Daly, and I'm the blue one that swears a lot.
And I'm Matt Freeman, and I'm the fastidious hypochondriac.
And together, we're gonna hammer you out a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Oof. This week on the show, we're doing something a little bit different. We are going to be talking about the 2018 video game called God of War, the PlayStation exclusive video game. I believe this is like technically the fifth game in the series, although I don't know if like you count like spin-offs and portable games.
Yeah, people usually just call it God of War 2018.
Yeah,
because it doesn't have a subtitle. It's just God of War.
We do this thing now where we love to make sequels to things that don't have a sequel number in them for some reason. I don't know why. In
this particular case, I think it actually earns its reset because it does sort of reimagine who this character is and what this game is supposed to be. I would 100%. Say.
Yeah, I mean, so we're going to talk all about God of War, and the first thing I want to do when we get into that conversation is talk to you about why we're talking about this, because I think the journey to how we got to do an episode about this game is an interesting conversation, I think.
Sure.
So we're going to talk about God of War, and then we're going to wrap everything up. It was Independence Day a couple days ago, and I thought it'd be fun to talk about that movie, Independence Day, that turned 25 years old today. I haven't watched it in a few years, but we're going to talk about it anyway, because I think we've both seen this movie enough to where we don't actually have to watch it to be able to talk about it.
Yeah, that's one of the movies that I could just press play in my brain and watch it all the way through and do all the dialogue and everything.
Yeah, I'm doing it right now.
Yeah,
Will Smith is waking up. He's gonna go look at the paper.
Is that Earthquake?
Hey, babe, they're talking about the quake. While he's peeing in his... Okay, we got to move on. Let's go ahead and dive into God of War. Matt, what is this video game all about?
Many years after the events of God of War 3, Kratos has ended up in the world of Norse mythology in ancient Norway, in the realm of Midgard, and has a son named Atreus. After Kratos' second wife and Atreus' mother, Faye, passes away from an unknown cause, the two set out on a journey to fulfill her final wish of spreading her ashes at the highest peak of the Nine Realms.
All right, so this game was directed by Cory Barlog, which sounds like a Cory Balrog. That's a really cool name.
It's a very lucky name for somebody who works in this sort of genre.
Yes, absolutely. It is a PlayStation exclusive game by Santa Monica Studios, I believe is the name of the studio that made this game. All right, Matt, this is kind of your show this week. Yeah. I want to kind of set the stage for why we're having this conversation, and that is, I don't know if you even remember this. I think it was like 2 years ago when I played this game. I came on and did like a brief 15-minute segment about my experience with this game, which was that I really, really loved it. I think I told you to play it and you promptly ignored me for a year and a half. And then decided to finally do that. And then I think it's fair to say you have become obsessed with this video game to a level I don't think I've ever seen in you in video games.
Well, I'm not sure.
Basically, the past 3 months, every time we talk about anything, you bring up God of War in some way.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been obsessed with anything as much as this game. So, wow. That's why we're doing this show, is because I can't shut up about it. And you're like, maybe if we do a Doofcast, he'll get it out of his system.
Yeah. By the way, this is why you need to watch Buffy, because if we do a Doofcast on it, I'll get it out of my system. And I'll never talk about it ever again.
Wow. Okay, that's tempting.
It's not true. All right. So I guess talk to me about how you approached this game, and I guess like your history with the franchise, because this is, as we said, like the fourth or fifth or whatever. Let's just call it the fourth game in the main God of War series. Had you played any of the previous games?
No, I had no awareness of this franchise. I'd never played any other God of War games, which maybe helped me, interestingly, because like, I feel like if you come into this game with preconceptions of who this Kratos character is, then like a lot of the beginning part of the game is going to be like adjusting, to the ways they've decided they're going to change the character. And with me, I was just getting to know this character for the first time, and the story of the game introduces you to the character perfectly well. You don't have to know anything. Like I just sort of vaguely knew like he's a Greek, he's a Greek god. He I guess he wiped out all of the Greek gods at some point in the past, and now he's in Norway. That's all you need to know. The game catches you up on everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
It does for sure.
and and I don't even remember why I bought it exactly. I think it might have been on your recommendation. I might have seen some other strong recommendation on it. But I just it's it feels like a weird like understatement to say that it's like a perfect game, because it's like, well, for me, and admittedly I'm someone who doesn't play a lot of video games, but for me it's a game that elevated what I understood video games to be able to do,
Okay.
because it's more like a, many hour movie, except you are in the movie, and then it just takes full advantage of like bringing you into the story and making you actually like make do the things that the character is doing and feel ownership, feel like it's you, feel fully identified with the characters. And I don't know, we can go into pretty much every facet of it down to the smallest detail, and I can talk about
I think we will.
what I like about it. But that's like my first like, I was just so like blown away. And I think again, a part of it might be just the fact that I play so few games,
Sure.
that when I don't play a lot of games for like, basically 10 years, and then I pick up a cutting edge game, it's like hitting me with the full force of 10 years of technology development. But I don't think it's just technology. Like, it's not just the visuals. It's the fact that this is like a fully immersive world experience. I don't know what word to use for it. I mean, do you know what I'm talking about? Like, do I sound like a crazy person here, or is this
No,
resonating with you?
it is. I mean, I certainly play a lot more games than you, so I think I've managed to have this experience in other games that you haven't played yet. But I totally get where you're coming from here. I think, I'm kind of spoiling the conversation we had on this month's Freeman Bros, which should be out now if you're listening to this. So if you are a patron at the $10 level or higher on Patreon, you can listen to that conversation, in which we kind of sort of got into some of this, but we really were talking about other things as well. But um, I think that video game storytelling is, for the most part, pretty terrible.
Mm-hmm.
It's gotten by, and I think this is a story in this game that is one of the better told stories in video games, especially in AAA games. Like I kind of went on a rant in our conversation with Daniel about AAA game design that I just can't stand anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And this is definitely an outlier to that whole thing. I mean, it still has some of the AAA design stuff, but it's mostly not hidden, but downplayed. Like the most annoying AAA stuff of the open world stuff. Like God of War has some of that open world exploration collectible nonsense that drives me crazy about all the Ubisoft Assassin's Creed games, but it's different here. And one of the interesting things about it is this idea that console exclusivity in this case might actually be a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just feel like the fact that PlayStation, Sony knew they could spend a shit ton of money on this game and use it as a thing that could sell their hardware is like what allowed it to be a game in a way that like the Call of Duties and the Ubisoft games and hundreds of other games can't just be video games. They have to be ongoing experiences that get you to spend money on shit. But because the goal of this game was to sell a PlayStation 4, that was the goal of the game, was to, not exactly because this came out, I think, much later than the PS4 came out, but it's part of its goal. Whenever you have first party games that are console exclusives, the game moves the hardware and vice versa. And so that was the goal. And I think that allowed a creative freedom and a type of game development that doesn't happen in the AAA space as much anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think the objective here was just like make a game people are going to love.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas often the objective is something more like make a game that will like hook people into your ecosystem, and then constantly milk them for money forever.
Make a game people are going to feel like they have to log into once a day for the next 4 months.
Yeah. Yes. And people do love this game. Like, it totally succeeded. Yeah. And I mean, I think the reason why I think it's appropriate to preface this by saying, directed by Corey Barlog, is that this is a dude who basically helmed this and made sure that it worked. And like there, so one of the things that I've done since I'm obsessed with the game is like watch all of the like um documentaries and like game developer conferences that are on YouTube. And like it's really clear that there was like so much iteration on every part of this game, where they would, from the story to the combat to I guess just a bunch of different facets of those two things, because those are kind of the main things, honestly.
Sure.
To like the way the world was set up to as well. They would like try things and then they'd be like, "No, it's not working." Back to the drawing board, like over like repeatedly.
Yeah.
They would, and that everything is just so like honed, and I mean, obviously they spent a huge amount of money on this, and a huge amount of time. But like, I really think, setting like time and money aside, I think it actually mattered that there was somebody sitting in the driver's seat in that director's chair, basically being like, not good enough, not good enough. And it's interesting because Cory Barlog, like as a human being, seems like such a teddy bear, but but he's clearly like just not, he's not going to let it out the door unless it's working, unless it's correct. And it seems like that was really necessary, because man, like everything does just click together, and it just, the whole experience just comes together so well.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think this is a remarkable story. Like, take out the gameplay elements, which I know we'll get into. We'll get into the gameplay, and we'll get into the way that the game uses gameplay to tell a story. But just on a base level, the story that is being told here is incredibly captivating, incredibly impactful. The relationship between Atreus and Kratos is amazing and heartfelt. And I played this game a couple years ago. When you said you wanted to do an episode on it, and we finally decided we were doing it, I replayed it. And this is the first time I played it as a father. And of course, it takes on that new tinge to it, right? When you are a father in this game about being a father and being a son, mm-hmm. and trying to, deal with your own shit while trying to help ensure that you are raising a good person that is going to not only be better than you, but survive and live in a world that is scary and terrible sometimes. Right. And it's I mean, one of those universalities, whether you have kids or not, like these are things we all worry about. And I don't know, there's something beautiful in the way this game chooses to tell that story, and the brilliant ways in which it takes Norse mythology and kind of uses the stories that we've all heard before. Maybe not all of us. I've read more Norse mythology than I probably should have, but because I find it interesting. But like it borrows from these stories, and it doesn't, sometimes it outright changes stuff, but sometimes it more just like fills in a gap between stories in a way that it thinks is interesting. And I mean, I love that. I mean, the original games were always, they dealt with the Greek gods and Greek mythology, but like incredibly loosely. It's just like Zeus is Kratos' dad, and he doesn't like him, mm-hmm. so he's gonna kill him, and he's gonna kill anyone that gets in his way on his way to kill him. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, like you get to see the Titans, and you get to meet the whole Greek pantheon, and it's kind of cool to see this combination of creatures from Greek myth that you're fighting and all the Greek gods, and it's fun. It's a fun idea. It's why those games were successful. But this takes the lore and the myth of Norse mythology and really infuses it into the game in a way that I don't think the ones before it ever did.
Yeah, there's speaking of material on YouTube, there's a really great YouTube video that goes through the fact that it actually seems that the Norse mythology is pretty much perfectly honored, with the exception that Loki is missing.
Yeah,
and thus all of the things that Loki would have caused didn't happen, or happened differently, or what have you. Mm-hmm. And so that's the and then within the story there is a reason why Loki is not there, although that's sort of saved for the sequel, I suppose.
Sure.
I guess we have actually been avoiding spoilers up till this point, but I don't know. I think
I don't think we can talk about this without getting into spoilers.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to talk more specifically about like the father-son story.
Yeah.
Which you mentioned a moment ago, but like I think not just in video games, but like in fiction, I don't know if I've seen this sort of good of an exploration of some of the more just sort of everyday challenges of parenthood, where like you said, Kratos, he doesn't communicate particularly well. He has a temper. His son is like a great kid, but he's still a kid. He
Mhm.
doesn't know how to do things. Sometimes he like creates problems that you have to solve, or it's like it forces you to confront the sort of like like feelings of frustration and love that exist simultaneously, and feeling disappointed in yourself for lashing out and stuff like that, where the game puts you in the seat and puts you in that position. And then I love the whole, so like I think probably my favorite part of the game is so Atreus has been frustrated with you at times, but has never really gotten genuinely super angry with you until you finally tell him that he's also a god and that you're a god, and then he begins to get really arrogant.
Oh, I love it.
And it's interesting because Kratos slash your surrogate
Yeah, I
doesn't
love how
quite
you're saying you there, because
it,
I think that is part of the brilliance of the game, actually.
exactly, like you don't really know, you slash Kratos doesn't really know how to deal with it. Like he's just kind of like mildly weirded out, but he's like, well, I guess you can almost see him thinking like, well, I guess that's the way I talk to people. So but like he definitely notices that Atreus is not behaving the same way. And then it culminates in Atreus just turning into a little asshole. And I think my favorite, like one of the many really cool things the game does is like at a certain point, um he stops listening to you in combat. So like usually you just press square and he'll shoot an arrow,
Yeah.
which is something I really came to rely on in combat, is like
Oh, yeah.
as part of my dynamic. And he just stopped listening to me, to my commands. And when you'd push square, he'd be like, leave me alone. And you're like, you little shit. But no, it's so good. And then it, but then of course, the plot continues, and he goes too far. He realizes that he's kind of lost his head. There's a great moment where Kratos is like, you need to honor your mother, because like that's a great way of putting like what
Yeah.
the mistake he's making is. He's being too much like Kratos. He needs to honor the side of him that's more like his mother. And
Yeah, I mean, it's so fascinating, because I think we come into this relationship already in it, right? Like
mm-hmm.
the game opens with his wife dying, a woman we never actually get to meet, and she just exists in the story through the way these two characters talk about her, which I think is marvelous writing, because you really get to understand the shape of who this person was, even though you never see them or see them interact with anyone. But the other thing is that you get to understand how the dynamic between these three people worked before he was ever there,
Mm-hmm.
before we were there observing it. Like, Kratos was not a very active father, very clearly. I don't know what he was doing. Like, he was probably just off like hunting and avoiding, and his wife was doing most of the child rearing. And so we're in the situation where she's gone now, and he finds his kid in his hands, and he's like, what the hell do I do with this kid? And I love how the game, this is one of the things that I think video games can do that like a movie couldn't, that maybe a TV show could do, but like the long form storytelling over hours and hours and hours of showing how their relationship grows and changes. This is also something I think the game The Last of Us did beautifully, is show these two main characters and how their relationship changes and morphs, and how their feelings towards each other change. I kind of love that the game starts with the really like the thematic point is just like, how does Kratos learn to be a father to this kid?
Mm-hmm.
But then it shifts from, how do I tell my son about who he is and who I am without having him go down the same path? And then it kind of moves to, how do I protect him from becoming me? How do I protect him from the world? Like, and I love the way, like, you can almost see the writer sitting in the room looking at Norse myth and seeing the story of Freya and Balder, and seeing the story and being like, this is a woman who is like terrified for her son, to the point where she goes out and attempts to save him from all harm, make sure he never dies, and make sure nothing can hurt him. And it absolutely destroys him. It robs him of experience and life and everything. And I just like, you can see the director go like, oh, there's something there. There's something I
Yeah.
can do with that. And I can reflect, always in God of War, it's been this really interesting story about Zeus and Kratos and their relationship, and the father son dynamic. And so you can take that and send it forward then and see, are we repeating cycles? Are we breaking free of cycles? What are we doing here? And just watching that relationship between father and son evolve and change over the course of the game is really, really remarkable.
Yeah, that's a great point. The contrast between those, because you're surrounded by these failed relationships. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the whole game is, the two dwarf brothers are, they're brothers who have had a falling out and they're not talking
Yeah.
to each other. They're kind of using you to talk to each other,
Yeah.
which is great.
And then both of Thor's sons, who Thor is not in the game, but we see his sons,
Yeah,
and how that we kind of see another terrible father son relationship reflected in how Thor clearly treats his kids.
yeah. And I mean, I love that it doesn't just gesture at these things; like it really explores them.
Mm-hmm.
Kratos has to make the choice, and it's really like something like, I think, the midpoint of the game where he makes the choice to tell to start to be honest with his son, and he doesn't become completely honest until the end of the game when he tells him,
Yeah.
"Hey, I killed my dad. Like I I did like a really terrible thing, and I feel terrible about it. Well, sort of, but um,
He just hates gods, and
yeah,
like he hates being a god, and he hates what being a god means. I think a lot of that is, I think I don't remember the exact quote, but when Atreus is like, is this what being a god is? Fathers betraying sons, sons betraying fathers,
mhm,
like, and Kratos is like, no, it doesn't have to be. Like, we can be different. We can set out on our own path.
yeah,
Of course, this is all complicated by the fact that he's revealed to be the god of mischief by the end of it.
yeah.
So who knows what the hell that means?
Right. I mean, I think there's some hints that there might be some like time travel stuff involved at some point, but
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. I don't need to go all theory crafty, because honestly, that as sort of fun as that is, and a good hook for a sequel, that's not something that I was really thinking about too much. I thought the game as it was great.
Yeah, I mean, it does certainly leave things open for a sequel. Like the last moments are Ragnarok is here early,
Mhm,
right? Which the name of the sequel is God of War Ragnarok. So we're dealing with that, but as a contained story, it is perfect
yeah.
on its own.
Yeah, just one other sort of gameplay note that I liked was how there are several times in the game where Atreus is snatched by somebody, or gets lost or something like that, and your rage bar immediately fills up to the max, and then you just tear through whatever's in your path, and I love that as like the representation of like Kratos absolutely does love his son. He's just really bad at showing it, and so
Yeah.
he goes absolutely crazy when his son is in danger.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, I think more and more the older I get, the more I want to see video games use all these gameplay elements as ways of telling story. I think, there's so much in this game that goes on in like the interstitial dialogue, like between cutscenes, that are just the way the two characters are talking to each other as they explore the world. I mean, you have the Mimir head that serves as our exposition head, um, but
Such a good idea.
it's such a good idea, and the way he the way the two characters relate to the stories that he's telling them. um and there's all these side quests in the game, and they don't necessarily enhance or directly influence the story, but like they almost all deal with Kratos and Atreus' relationship. Like, I'm thinking of the ones where like the dead guy is asking for help, like find the corpses of my sons or something. And it's, again, just like you said, another reflection of relationships and how those relationships have failed, and Kratos's kind of uh, pessimism towards these tasks that random ghosts are giving them, spirits are giving them,
Yeah,
versus Atreus's like optimistic hopefulness, and how that reflects on how different they are as people. And there is this through line, especially in the early part of the game, that he is teaching him stuff that will destroy the unique, optimistic, hopeful person that he is, right? Like that.
mhm,
And I think that's kind of the nightmare realized when he starts becoming the arrogant asshole god.
mhm.
um and it's like, well, you did this, Kratos. Like, this is how you talked to him, this is how you talked about things, and this is partially your fault. And I love that realization that like the game doesn't have to come right out and tell you that's happening. You just start to feel it. You start, oh
Yeah.
no, oh no.
and the way that Kratos reacts to him shifts, because at first you do get the sense that he's like, ah, God, I have to like drag this kid around,
Yeah, yeah,
and like all of the like you know you're clearly not ready, like just really talking down to him, and then it changes to Kratos accepting him for who he is and what his strengths are.
hmm
And at the same time, like Atreus is also sort of gradually becoming awesome. So
yeah. That's true.
there's sort of a like, which I think is again a big part of parenthood, is like your kids do grow into people who are awesome, but you have to be open to like who they are and not have a fixed idea of like I think at the beginning Kratos is thinking like, I guess I need to make him hard like
hmm
me so we can survive in this world. And Atreus actually shows him like, well, there's other ways of being. Like it's because of Atreus that they like make some of the allies that they make, because he's so damn lovable. Like all of the other characters fall in love with Atreus, and
Yeah,
Kratos is like, I don't have time for your shit. But then you end up doing favors for them, and then it like that's the plot basically.
yeah. And they give you cool armor and axes and shit.
They give
So
you,
thanks, Atreus.
yeah, yeah. They and they tell you where the highest peak in the realms is, and um
hmm
yeah, it's great. I mean, and then I think like it's such a wonderfully earned moment to me when at the end when you're fighting Baldur and you're doing these combos with Atreus where like it's you and Atreus like tag teaming Baldur, and like and it's doing the quick time events, which is like the only time in a game that I've like been like fuck yeah for like a quick time event. Right? It's like it just feels so awesome that like you feel like you and this other character have like grown together to the point where you could do this, like not just as combatants but like as allies and friends and father son. It's
Yeah,
such a great like thing you can do with video games, that you, if it was just a film, it would probably still be an awesome moment, but there's something about the fact that like you're Kratos and that's your son Atreus, like makes it
yeah.
like feel real.
And yeah, he's helping you, and he's like, I think there's a version of this game in which, like all these games in the past have had, whenever you have the AI character that's following you around, they're like always a pain in the ass. Like
Hmm.
you always like have to go help them or save them or something. And Atreus is never that in this game. Like
Hmm.
he's, if he is, it's a scripted moment for some specific reason, but he's never like, the AI of the character never gets in your way and frustrates you, and so he just becomes useful. And yeah, I agree, the culmination of the story is them teaming up to fight Baldur together, and that is of course contrasted with Freya, who cannot trust her son to make his own decisions, cannot trust her son to be on his own, like who can't let go. And so she's invading their final battle,
Hmm.
and trying to get in the way. And it's just a very powerful moment. I mean, I love the moment, like you kill him, you kill her son, and
Hmm.
there's this very real moment of like, no, she's not going to forgive me ever. Like
Yeah.
I killed her son. Like this is never going to be something she gets over. Like if that happened to you, I would never forgive the person who did this. So like it's the way those two families compare and contrast, I think, is one of the most powerful elements of the story for me, because it just shows the path that you could have taken,
Yeah.
and the path that you've avoided.
Yeah. And of course, I mean, like you said, the fact that she couldn't let him make his own choices is what led to him making all the wrong choices and ending up getting killed by Kratos.
Yep. Yep.
Just speaking of awesome moments and just like the whole approach to the game, like I love the, very close to the beginning when it's been like a very slow somber game, like you chop down a tree and yelled at your son a little bit, and maybe you had to fight the troll, I don't know, whatever, that there was
Yeah, you fight a few guys
and,
at the
and
yeah.
like there's a bit of combat, but then somebody comes and knocks at your door and you open the door and it's this guy who, I know Kratos is supposed to be like 7 feet tall, but Baldur looks like this really small guy,
Yeah, he's
and
like
you
a shrimp.
and you're just like, this is, what the hell is this, and then there's the great interaction, which is just like a perfectly acted interaction where they're neither of them is going to back down. And then finally Balder punches you and you just smash through the ceiling and go flying. And it's like this amazingly cinematic moment that I think my jaw just dropped. There were so many moments where my jaw just like dropped. One of them was that where I'm like, it's so like unexpected and like bold, I guess. And then another one would be like the first time the world serpent comes out of the water, because it's just like epic and awesome.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's one of these things these games have always kind of dealt with is the enormity and scale that you can do. I think that's one thing. Like God of War 3 for the PlayStation 3, like had one of the greatest moments in the world of gaming ever, where you're like on your way through, you're running through a forest fighting enemies, and then like the camera zooms back and you realize that the forest is actually the back of like Gaia, one of the titans that is climbing Mount Olympus to invade and kill the gods. And it's just like this amazing moment where it totally understands how scale works and how scale is impressive and wonderful. And there's a lot less of that in this game because there's just not as many big things. But I think the World Serpent is certainly one of the moments where it can really play with scale in that fun way.
Yeah, I guess I'd say the other great bit there is when Freya is possessing the dead giant.
Yeah.
And then another great plot moment, Atreus calls for the World Serpent. And he shows up.
Yeah, and then of course the end of the game when they get to Jotunheim, and there's just like this beautiful serene vista with just giants dead in the background as far as you can see.
Yeah.
I think that was a beautiful moment. You don't even really understand what happened to them fully, but oh god, it's so great.
Yeah. I don't know, man. There's so many. There's so many things to talk about. So I think we mostly just talked about what you could call the story,
the plot, yeah.
Which, and I could honestly talk about the story for a full hour or more. But I think what's cool about talking about video games, which we don't normally talk about, but I sort of broke it down into like the story and then the combat gameplay, and then what I just hand-wavingly call the everything else gameplay. Sure. Which is sort of all of the gaming elements that are not combat. And so we could, I kind of just want to talk about the combat a little bit, because I just don't usually get sucked into like combat mechanics of things. Like it's just not a thing I nerd out about, but this really worked on me. Right.
This is, I think, the most amazing thing to me is not just that, hey, you played this really great game with a really good story and like got really into the story. Like that is what happened, but it's not all that happened here, because you have 100% of this game. Basically, you have done everything in this game you can do on like the hardest difficulty.
Yeah, I guess
which is insane, Matt. It's insane.
I have to confess to people, I played it through on Give Me God of War mode, not on a New Game Plus, so meaning I didn't have any gear. I just had the starting gear, and like the first few fights are so hard, but as soon as you start getting gear, it becomes doable, and you also get better, obviously.
Yeah, let me just say like how impressive this is. I started the game again on New Game Plus, so with my gear from the first round on the higher difficult. No, I don't think it's the one that you were playing on, but maybe the one like under that one. And I went into like the first few fights, and then I said, I don't have time for this. I need to beat this game quickly enough so I can talk about it with Matt. So I just went back to the easier difficulty. And it was actually, I mean, one bad thing I can say, it kind of frustrated me because like the difficulty I was at, it was a joke. Like it was too easy. But like the one up was just too ridiculous and too hard for me. I mean, I think part of this is because like I really don't think New Game Plus is meant for you to like jump into after not having played the game for a year. Like I think they expect you to have the flow of combat already, and I certainly hadn't. Especially because one of the big things combat-wise in this game, Matt, is it's a big departure from the original God of War games. The three God of War games were third-person action games, but the camera was much further out. They were like, it was not like this kind of close-up, intimate over the shoulder third person combat. It was a thing that when the first trailer for this game came out, it freaked a lot of people out because they're like, oh my God, you're taking away what God of War is, which is this like huge, massive you versus a bunch of people doing crazy combos, like crazy combat.
Hmm.
And so there was a real worry that going into this over the shoulder third person view, you would lose that. And I don't think you did. I mean, it's definitely different, but it's pretty great, actually.
Yeah, so I never played the other one, so I'm glad you gave a little bit of context for what's different.
Hmm.
I mean, I think I can articulate like exactly what it is that I like about, or maybe even love about this. So like I'll use for example, toward the beginning of the game on like the hardest difficulty, well, on any difficulty obviously, but I'm going to tell this from the perspective of playing it on the hardest difficulty. You fall through like a bridge into this pit, so it's sort of an unavoidable combat sequence. Like there's kind of no way to get through it other than to kill everything. And there's like, I don't know, there's probably like 10 Draugr in the pit, and then there's like 2 Draugr up on a hill shooting fireballs down at you. And at that point, like pretty much any one of these guys can kill you in 1, maybe 2 hits.
Sure.
And the game does not go easy. Like and so you need to, and also like you have far fewer special attacks at this point in the game because you're so early in the game. And so it really engaged like the puzzle solving part of me, which is for some reason rarely properly engaged by games. And I think I can articulate exactly why. It's because there's like just the right amount of optionality to satisfy me personally. I feel like if there was more, like if this was like a game where, you know, you go into a menu and you select from one of 27 spells, and you know, like if there's just too many options, then it seems like there's always some way to cheese your way out of things. And if there was just like one option, like if you can just like, you know, hit, then it's like, oh, well, then there's nothing you can do. You would just die. You couldn't survive. But
Hmm.
like because you have, you know, the ability to build up your rage meter for invulnerability, you have the ability to stun dudes and finish them off in a different way. You have the ability to like parry attacks, which then means that you get the counterattack. You
Yeah.
can, you know, you can block and just kind of like hide behind your shield and let Atreus take care of things at some points. You don't have the blades yet at that point in the game, but at later points you can choose between using your fists versus your blades of chaos versus your axe, which means those all have different strengths and weaknesses and different things they can do, different things they're good at. And so you may be like repeatedly switching those, like depending on what you want to do, like right now, or like right this instant, this kind of enemy pops up. You know, okay, I need to throw my axe at that, right?
Hmm.
Um, and I mean, there's just like that's just a there gets to be way more, especially later in the game when you start getting runic attacks, which are your magic spells, and then you basically customize which runics you're using depending on like what the situation is that you're facing.
Sure.
And so there's like just the right amount of like puzzle solving decision making, and so it feels incredibly satisfying when you successfully fight your way through what sort of seems like an impossible fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you're right. I mean, like the thing with these type of games, or at least the God of Wars of before, is I always kind of just like button mashed my way through them. Like I just kind of like would press the buttons really fast and then
Hmm.
like dodge a few times, and then you usually win. Usually win doing that.
Hmm.
This game is not quite like that. I mean, I think maybe on the lower difficulty levels you can get away with that for the most part. Not when you start fighting the harder things like the Valkyries. Certainly not on the higher difficulty levels. I think
Hmm.
it is a system that like doesn't seem that complicated on the surface, but it gets really intricate and detailed depending on the different challenges that are posed to you.
Yeah.
And it feels, I think the important part is it always feels fun. Like even when it's hard, even when it's frustrating at times, it still feels fun. It
Yeah.
feels like you're like, I always felt like the challenge felt fair, even on like I haven't beaten all the Valkyries because fuck those ladies. But like even on the really hard Valkyries that I were stuck on for like 45 minutes, I was like, okay, I'm losing, but like I know why I'm losing. Like I know what error I'm making. I know like I got greedy in this moment, or I
Hmm.
didn't block fast enough in this moment. Like it just feels like the game is very good at giving you the situation, allowing you to kind of mentally solve it, which involves hundreds of split second decisions that stack up on top of each other. But it always feels like okay, I get it. I understand. I know why I'm failing. I know why I'm not good enough for this yet. And
Yeah.
that makes it so, to me, even when I'm frustrated, because I did get frustrated, it's never like fuck this levels of frustrated that I felt with a lot of other games.
Yeah, I love that statement. It feels fair. That's the thing about the Valkyries is like when I finally, like, I took forever to beat the last Valkyrie, the queen, and the reason is I was like, I had to just, it had to be hammered through my head that I couldn't let her hit me. Like, it was like, Matt, you can't let her hit you at all.
Mm-hmm.
You can't afford to be hit. And because it just like you can take maybe 2 or 3 hits from her at that difficulty level. So I just had to get really good at blocking and dodging and like really memorize it. And it's like, then you really feel like a sort of positive challenge rather than just, like you said, that sort of unfair feeling of like, I don't even know why I died that time. I don't even know what I did wrong,
Yeah.
like you know exactly what your objective is and you can see yourself getting better. And then finally you beat her and you're like, yeah, I beat her because I got better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I think really honestly on my second playthrough, it wasn't until I went up against one of the Valkyries that I really, the combat unlocked for me to a
mhm,
place where I'm like, oh, I get this now. I
mhm.
understand it now. And it like, it almost made me want to turn up the difficulty again for the normal game and try it again, because like I think you go into the game, especially on those higher difficulties, and you make it like a kind of hack and slash action game where you're just gonna charge into this group of enemies and just mash, roll away, and then pick another lane and do that again. But that's not really the combat is actually, especially on the more difficult one, is very, very meticulous, very controlled,
Yeah.
very, picking your spot and then going back into a defensive stance again. It's which is different. I mean, it's which is very different from God of War
Yeah.
of old. But I mean, maybe that is an intentional design choice, right? Like maybe that reflects who Kratos is as an older man now,
Mhm.
who's seen a lot of shit and kind of uh, collapsed in on himself in a way that he's hiding his true nature. He's hiding who he is, and of course the axe and the blades play very differently. The blades of Chaos, or the blades of Athena, whatever they're called, they get the closest to what God of War level combat was, because their range is much more like you spin them around. It's much more like area of effect type
Right.
fighting. Um,
Yeah.
it's different, and I think it's really interesting seeing how the game combines those two formats to kind of reflect who Kratos is as a person. He is still that person that from those original games, but he's also this person with the axe, this kind of slower, sword and axe, sword and board type of controlled combat guy.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, it's very satisfying at times to be able to just wade through a bunch of relatively weak guys with the blades, which are just this whirlwind of death. But then also, like, you pull out that axe and make a pinpoint strike at some enemy that's shooting a fireball at you from far away, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like it really makes you feel like you have all of these amazing tools, and it's sort of only just up to your cleverness to use them.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and then the game really offers you just like tons of little things where it's like, the nightmares, the little flying guys who fly at you and explode.
Yep.
Like, there's just one example is like, you can always just like, dodge them, or you can throw your axe at them. But of course, the optimal thing to do is hit them with a thrown blade of chaos, which then pulls them back to you. Then you swing them around like a bola and you throw them at a different enemy, and you basically kill 2 birds with 1 stone. And like many enemies sort of have something like this, where it's like, if you sort of have to know the counter for them, which you may like, you're never told. You're never told these things. You just have to accidentally do it once and realize like, oh shit, I grabbed it, I pulled it, and then I threw it, and then I, like, that was awesome. And then you have to remember that. Or like with the ogres, where when you finish them, you get to kind of like steer them around afterward, and you can kill
Sure.
like 100 guys by just steering them properly.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a bunch of stuff like this where it's just like, it really rewards like paying attention and trying things, which I think one of the game designers actually talks about how they did this intentionally. Like, they designed the game so that you would accidentally do cool things and then try to figure out what you did and then incorporate that into your style.
Awesome. I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. That's so great. I guess I kind of want to talk to you about those blades though, because I
Sure.
think that's one of the most powerful moments in the game.
Yeah.
So your son is sick, Atreus is sick. you have to go to hell, right? You have to go to hell to get the heart of the the monster that guards the bridge into hell, which is perfect. But your axe won't work down there. No weapon. It needs to be a weapon that creates a fire that can resist the coldest temperatures ever. And me, as a former God of War player, almost immediately caught on to what they were doing here with that. Like, I was like, oh fuck, we're bringing back the blades. We're bringing them back. This is going to be huge. And it's this really powerful moment, like where you kind of slowly row your boat back to your home, kind of like open the trapdoor under the house and lift up the thing, and the reveal of the blades and what that means, like this past that he was desperately trying to run away from has found him here now. And the only thing that would ever make him want to take these things out is the fact that his son is in danger. I'm curious how that moment played for you without the background of the previous games. Like, you didn't know what these things were really until the game tells you.
I think I may have just through osmosis known that the Blades of Chaos were his signature weapon from other games, or the Blades of whatever.
I don't actually know what to call it.
I think they actually changed the name from game to game for some reason. But anyway, I think it landed with me fine. I mean, it might have landed harder if I had been that Kratos as well, instead of I only really know old, wizened, more battle hardened, war weary Kratos, and so but like I could still feel. I mean, the game really sits with that moment because there's a reason for urgency. Like, your son is really sick, but Kratos is like slow. He's almost like letting the boat just drift almost to get back home, and he's just like. And he just has this expression of, he's even more grim than usual. And he's just like, God, I just don't.
And the atmosphere of the game is following suit. Like, it's stormy and terrible, and there's lightning. Oh, it's such a wonderful thing.
The sort of undead creatures are like running rampant. I think it's implied that this is like because of what's happening to Atreus. Like, there's something about his nature, but it doesn't matter. It just works as atmosphere anyway.
And then Athena herself comes and taunts you about it, which is great. Which, I don't know, does it say in the game specifically, like, you in the God of War game, you killed your wife and son? You basically go into a rage and influenced by Ares, the God of War, and killed your wife and son.
No, it never says that in this game. I think I read that somewhere else. Obsessed. But no, it never says that in this game. I think I sort of get it. Like, I think maybe they just wanted to avoid that complexion of like Kratos just murdered his whole family and like,
I mean, it does kind of hurt, like, the idea that, like, this is a story about a father and son, and we're like, oh, what about the last one? Oh, we fucking murdered him. I mean, but like the whole trilogy, or the original God of War trilogy, is like him dealing with that and lashing out at everyone around him because of his guilt around those events. So I mean, it does inform his character in that, like, he's terrified of that being that person again, and that's part of what he's hiding from, is being that person. But it doesn't come out and say it directly. I do like that, like, there are earlier moments in the game where you see Kratos kind of like fiddle with the wrappings around his arms, which is where the chains of the blades wrap around, like symbolic of the slavery that he was put into because of the fickle nature of the terrible gods. And so he's kind of messing with those wrappings throughout the game. And so even if you didn't know what those exactly were, I think it does still build them to the moment very well, because you, like, the game has brought you to pay attention to these how his arms are kind of wrapped in gauze, because they've got scars from the fire of the blades wrapped around his arm. And then it, of course, builds to a wonderful moment at the end when she takes off those wrappings, stops hiding those scars underneath, and fully embraces that he's both people now. He's the Norse Kratos, and he's the Greek Kratos.
I think the touch that worked best for me in terms of show don't tell storytelling was the few beats where Kratos, where Atreus is really bummed about something, and it's a very heartfelt moment, and you're always looking over Kratos' shoulder, and he lifts his hand as if to embrace or at least like put a hand on his son's shoulder, and he stops himself. And I think one of those times the bandages come loose when he does that, and so he pulls his arm back and fixes the bandage, and it's like a reminder of like, no, you don't deserve to have a good relationship with your son because
Mm.
you're a monster, basically, because that's what Athena tells him, is you're a monster. You're not a man, you're a monster, you're a god, which is a kind of monster, basically, in his view. um but then, finally, like, that's what makes it feel so amazing at the end, when they're fighting Simpatico, and like, uh Kratos is, without thought, he takes his son by the shoulders and, gets down, like, kneels down and looks at him in the eyes. And it's like, Kratos at the beginning of the story never would have done that.
No.
He would always talk down to him. um
Yeah, I mean, it's so good. Like, it's so powerful to like to watch him change around how he treats the kid and how Atreus treats him, and just how their relationship goes from one of like annoyed, like almost in like a stereotypical, like their relationship starts off like the very stereotypical father and son, like, I'm the man, I am not involved in the raising of the children, and
mhm.
I am like, I will teach you the manly things only, and I don't care, like, I'm not going to let you know how I feel, and I'm not going to talk to you about your emotions because that's weak. It's all this very, very stereotypical masculine things. And then by the end of it, they have this beautiful moment together, like, we're this moment of happiness and sadness around their mother and wife, and of friendship and love. And I don't know, it's totally earned, and it's totally there, and it's incredibly touching. And I feel like the game played towards that moment in every way, from cutscenes to interactions in fighting to the one-off conversations that they have with each other while you're rowing in a boat. Like, all of it is in service of getting across this story in a way that is unique to video games. Like, that's the thing. I spent the entirety of last year playing all the Final Fantasy games again, and the one thing I learned with that experience, I learned many things, but the main thing I learned with that experience is I want a video game to tell me a story that no other medium could tell me. That's
Mhm.
what I want. And I feel like at its best, this game is a game that a story that could only be told this way via this type of gameplay and storytelling.
Yeah, I agree. The fact that it can be so long, the fact that you are, with this character over this period of time, and that you're sort of have some liberty to make certain kinds of choices. One thing that I really think actually did matter is the fact that they had this idea that the whole game is one shot, um, which is
Hmm.
sort of hilarious thing to say. But the thing is, there's never any break in the camera. There's never a cut. The camera only ever, sometimes it moves around you and kind of zooms out to give you a view of a scene, but then it always just returns to back over your shoulder, and there's never a cut. I don't know if you
Interesting.
knew that.
I didn't, but I mean,
Yeah,
as soon as you said it, like, I went back into my memory and was like, oh shit, you're right.
yeah, right. I mean, the closest thing would be like, okay, you press pause and you can no longer see the screen, but that's not really, like the camera stays in the same place.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like when you go into the doors to the Yggdrasil, the World Tree portals, you can't see anymore because it's too white. But that, I don't really think that counts either. Like the point is, they really perfectly honored it, and I think it actually does impact your sense of immersion, because a cut is a little tiny piece of artifice. And yes, we are trained to just take that in stride by
Hmm.
movies, but the fact that they never ask that of you, I think it does matter on some level.
Yeah. I mean, like, if we can sit here and pat a movie like 1917 on the back for shooting itself like it was at one continuous shot, which it wasn't. They masked cuts
Hmm.
constantly throughout that movie. Of course, they had to. It's impossible to shoot a movie that way. I think we can pat this thing on the back, even though it's a completely constructed oneer, right?
Yeah,
Like, it's just like, it's the whole thing's artificial because the whole game's artificial.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, that's an aesthetic choice that I never consciously recognized. But I think you're absolutely right. It
yeah.
it it keeps you in the world.
Right. I mean, you'll notice. you'll notice it because like, when you move, here's the way in which it helps, specifically when you know you've been running all around collecting, the heart of the undead dude or whatever, or the heart of the gatekeeper. You bring it to Freya's hut, and when you go in, there's not that typical like jarring, like, all right, now we're doing a cutscene. It's just like you walk in and then the camera gently moves away from your shoulder,
Yeah.
and then at the end of the scene it comes back, and there's no jarring feeling of like, I guess I'll just put the controller down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fascinating because, again, I never was consciously aware of this, but like I can see that scene. Like
Mm-hmm.
the camera is following Kratos over his shoulder as he walks into the hut, and then it says, "Okay, I'm gonna go check out that over there, and I'm gonna leave you behind temporarily, Kratos, as I check this thing out over
Mm-hmm.
here." Yeah, it totally does that, and there's something. I think it helps with the immersion. I think it helps, like, yes, we are Kratos, but also we are the camera. We are
Mm-hmm.
along for this ride, and we want to see what's over here now. And so the camera responds to us and,
Yeah.
knows where we're going to want to look.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. So we talked about the story a lot. We talked about the combat a little bit. And then I just think, like, in terms of the everything else gameplay, which is the third bullet point that I made up,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there's probably like an official game developer word for this. I think, like you said earlier, the key is it doesn't make you do a bunch of stupid shit, but there is room to do other things if you want. Like you can go hog wild, optimizing your gear loadout and upgrading things, or you can just pretty much ignore that. And you can still get by. So it's kind of all up to you.
Well, let me tell you what I hate.
Okay.
I hate open world gameplay. I hate it.
Mm-hmm.
I hate the modern version of what open world has become, which is mostly the Ubisoft model, which is just like, here you got a shit ton of collectibles everywhere, and then you got these towers you have to climb, and they unlock pieces of the map, and then you've got these different camps that you have to clear, and it's all on the mini map, and you open the fucking map, and there's like 37,000 different things that you can do, and it's like, look, it's content. Don't you love the content? It's all here. The map is huge. We have the biggest map ever, so we can put that on the box, and for some reason that's appealing. I hate that shit. I hate it. And it's not that this game doesn't have open world-y stuff. It certainly does. This is a big world. It is. There's a lot going on here, and there's a lot of off the beaten path things you can do that don't follow the main story. But yeah, it's not in this kind of extremely formulaic method of where there's actually only 5 things to do. We've just copy pasted them 16 times.
Yeah.
And so it feels like something new, but it's not.
Yeah.
That doesn't really have that. I mean, there's plenty of reasons to explore. I think part of like what I test in these type of games now is like, am I enjoying running around doing this stuff, or am I just feeling like I'm completing a list of like, get all 6 these things, get all 7 of these things? And my experience with this game, even on the second playthrough, was I didn't plan on doing the side stuff on the second playthrough because I was like trying to finish the game so I could talk to you about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I just like found myself wandering. Oh, what's that? What's that over there?
Yeah.
Oh, there's a path. Oh, there's a dock. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, this is one of the things that I needed to get for that thing.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Or you see something and you're like, how do I get up there?
Yeah.
And then you start climbing the thing, and then you realize like, oh, but there's a puzzle I have to solve to.
Yeah.
Like it. So another good thing about that is when you get to the Lake of Nine the first time, which is the main central hub area, it's completely flooded, and thus a lot of the area is actually off limits. And so there's a shorter list of little areas you can explore, which I think is great because it's like, even if you find yourself getting carried away with, the completionist instinct to do all the things, there's only so much you can do before you kind of have to get back to the plot. And then as you advance the plot, the world serpent moves, the lake lowers, and then you get access to a whole nother tier of challenges, which are actually harder because the game is smart. And I think maybe the lake even lowers one more time after that. I get kind of confused because I feel like it does actually, but I don't remember if it actually does. But anyway, the game, it actually sort of opens up that world to you. And I think the idea of having the Lake of Nine be this big giant giant but not kind of overwhelming area. Like the fact that it's all water gives you this sense that it's just enormous, but actually, it's this ring of locations around the
Yeah.
rim that you're
It's
that you
not that big.
yeah,
You can probably travel from one side of the map to the other in like 5 minutes.
yeah,
Tops.
right. And you're getting a fun story while you're doing it.
Yeah.
And then around that ring there are the other little towns and dwarf cities and such that you can go into, which are basically side quests, which are just entirely optional.
Hmm.
And yes, I did all of them, but not actually on my first playthrough. I didn't on my first playthrough.
Yeah. And you can free some dragons if you want to.
Yeah.
And you can fucking get all those stupid Odin owls, which I did not do that.
No, I'd have no interest in that. that doesn't sound fun to me at all. And yeah, no.
That's I think the only place where someone was like, hey, come on, you need like a collectible that has like 100 of, because that's what games do now. Come on. Look at Ubisoft. You see the feathers? You see the feathers you have to collect in Assassin's Creed? Do that. Do the feathers. Feathers.
It's almost a blessing, because I feel like here's the horrible truth is, I feel like if they had told me which ones I had gotten, then I might have felt compelled to look for the rest. But as it is, it just tells you how many you've gotten.
Yeah.
And so that means, like, if you've gotten 70 out of 180 or whatever, you're like, well, I don't know which 70 I got. And I'm going to be really pissed off if I go back to one of those locations and it turns out I already got that one. That sounds like that would make me mad. So I'm just not going to do that.
The trick for a game to make me do shit that I don't want to do but have to do for a completionist is like to tell me in this very room if there are any secrets I haven't gotten.
Yeah.
Like the Resident Evil remakes do this thing where the room changes color when you have gotten all the things in it. So like if you're standing in a room and it's red still, you're like, fuck, there's something in here. I cannot leave until I found out what this thing in here is. So yeah, if it had divided up the game into little rooms and said there's still 3 feathers in this area, I'd be like, fuck you. I'll get I'll get the damn feathers. But I wouldn't want to. And like, I don't know, like I hate that shit. And I think it's fake content. And even when this game slips into it, it does so almost like, I guess we'll just, here's some, look up, there's an owl circling above you.
Right. I don't think you get a very good, very meaningful reward for doing that anyway. So other than just saying that you did that thing. So the other, like one of the other things I want to talk about, just because I went, totally crazy on the game, is like the Muspelheim and Niflheim sort of end game content, if you will. Mm-hmm. Where after you beat the game, you can do all these challenges, which are, so like the Muspelheim challenges are like the thing to do if you want to get better at combat, because they're like contrived to be incredibly difficult. Like you have to kill a certain number of dudes inside this relatively small circle on the ground in a certain amount of time.
Sure.
And it's like, okay, so like you have to just become a master of like positioning and using the blades to pull people toward you and getting the glory kills at just the right time and stuff.
Man, the take no damage one was such a pain in the ass.
It's that certain ones did cross the line into frustrating, I'll be honest.
I think that one was a pain in the ass, but the one that I think sucked the worst was the kill 100 enemies one, because it just takes so long.
Yeah.
This is too long. But yes, I did every single one of those.
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, me too. And then the Niflheim, where you get the best armor in the game, is actually just a roguelike. They just went ahead and stuck a roguelike in their game as just a thing you can do.
Yeah. And guess what I did once and then said, nah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's probably the wise choice. But I mean, honestly, I probably, I just enjoyed doing it. Like it wasn't even I mean, I don't know. There's always a tension in games between like, am I having fun or am I frustrated? But I think in this game, it was always like a productive tension. And I would.
Yeah. I mean, like I've outspoken on my dislike for the roguelike genre in general. So like basically what happens, like in any roguelike, what happens when I ran into Niflheim is I went in there and I was having a really good run and I was getting lots of that item. And then I fucking died and I lost it all. And I said, fuck this. I lost everything I did. I don't want to do this anymore. And I stopped doing it. And that's what happens every time I play a roguelike is I'm having a really good run and then I fuck something up and die. And I'm like, I just lost all my progress and I feel like I've accomplished nothing and fuck this, I'm done.
Yeah.
And which is why I liked Hades so much, because even when that happened, I still got some things and the gameplay was so fun that I was enjoying it anyway. So
yeah, right.
But
luckily it's just a totally optional part of the game that you can
Yeah,
just ignore.
totally,
So yeah.
totally. And then there's the Valkyries, right? That's the end game.
Mhm.
Well, isn't the hardest Valkyrie at the top of Muspelheim? I
Mm,
think no,
Um,
that's just there is one up there, but that's not the
yeah,
queen.
the queen is the one that only unlocks after you've beaten all the other ones, and the
Yeah.
queen borrows attacks from a bunch of different ones. Most of the other Valkyrie you only have to really memorize like 3 different attacks, but she'll use a whole bunch of different attacks, and you have to learn to recognize them by sight, and that's it's kind of a pain. It got to be a bit much, but I felt very satisfying
Yeah, well,
to ultimately.
you're playing on the fuck you difficulty
Yeah.
level. Like it's literally I watched a very talented video game player streamer play on that difficulty level before.
Uh-huh.
And he was like it looks like awful. It looks like I'm still this is I mean to be entirely honest with you here at the end of this conversation, the entire reason we're having this conversation is because you told me you beat the game on the hardest difficulty level. And I was like, who the fuck are you? Like, this is it's so different from the way you normally approach video games that I didn't know what was happening.
Yeah.
It's so wild to me. Like, this game has touched something in you beyond any video game ever, even StarCraft, which is a game you love and play a lot. Like, you never did that shit like on StarCraft.
Yeah. Well, and I'm really bad at StarCraft. Like I'm objectively bad at video games. And so
No,
for
I don't see. Here's the thing, though. You can't say that anymore. You beat this game on the fuck you difficulty. You're not bad at video
well,
games.
exactly. I mean, yes, you're right. Like I loved it enough that I just made myself get good, which I think most games never make me want to get better at them. I'm just like, if it's not clicking for me, I'm just like, I don't care. I guess I'll stop playing.
Mhm.
Or with StarCraft, I'm like, I I don't really care if I win or lose. It's like oh, I lost some ladder points. Who cares? But for this game, it's like, no, I want to beat the Valkyrie. I will not feel done until I do that. And also, I think here's part of the thing that helps is like, it's not just, check off the box that says you beat the Valkyrie. The Valkyries are actually a story.
Mhm.
With each Valkyrie you beat, you get a little bit more of the story. And then that leaves you feeling like, well, I'm not going to get my resolution to the story of the Valkyries until I've freed all the Valkyries, because you're killing them, but you're really freeing them, which I think is kind of nice, because
Yeah.
at a certain point you get tired of wanton murder. Um, um,
No, not in God of War.
yeah, actually most of the things you kill in this game are like undead, basically, except
Mhm.
for the dark elves, which are probably just totally innocent. So
Yeah, that is a difference. Like, I guess Baldur maybe is a difference, but like, I don't know. These games have matured a lot, just
mhm.
like its protagonist did. Like the original God of War games were like this very appealing to teenage me kind of blood, sex, and violence stuff.
Mhm.
Like the games that like were infamous because there were boobies in it, because Kratos is fucking some chicks in PS2 era pixelated boobies, which is just like fucking terrible.
Uh-huh.
But like there's the whole scene when you're on the boat and it's like press X to bang hot chicks, and it's like yeah, and like the violence is like over the, which is not to say the violence in this isn't over the top, but like I think one of the things you do in God of War 3 is you Helios, the god of the sun, like you fucking chop his head off, or
Uh-huh.
I think you rip his head off, and it's like fucking crazy and brutal. And I mean, the games have kind of grown up a little bit and calmed down a little bit. This is still a very violent game. I mean, you're also carrying around a talking head with you the whole time, but it has definitely matured. And I think, Cory Barlog, I think, was involved with God of War from the beginning, and it seems like he's matured as a person as
Yeah.
well, and he's interested in different kind of stories and different ways of telling those stories and framing those stories. And I don't know, the games have grown up, and I love this version.
Yeah, Cory Barlog had a kid is
Yeah.
is kind of the long and short of it, actually.
Sure.
And wanted to explore things in a more mature way. Yeah, I think you're
Hmm.
exactly right. I think maybe the very last thing I wanted to touch on is just how incredible the music is.
Mm-hmm.
Bear McCreary is actually a composer who has done a lot of stuff. I wasn't familiar with his name until this game, when of course I looked it up, and then I realized, oh, he's done a bunch of other stuff for other movies and stuff that you'd be familiar with. Although it's
Yeah,
not
that name
coming.
sounds extremely familiar, but
Yeah, I think he's done for some TV shows. I'm just gonna look it up while we're talking. But yeah, I mean, there's a few, there's a few tracks in this game that I will just hum to myself just because they're beautiful. I thought it was like, well, I'll just listen to it sometimes. My kids even like to listen to it. They just think it's nice.
yeah, I definitely have this on my rotation of like writing music or working music where I can't listen to things with lyrics because then I can't focus on what I'm doing. But
Yeah,
he
yeah.
did Battlestar Galactica, Bear McCreary,
The TV show,
the
yeah.
TV show. Yeah,
He did the Cloverfield Paradox.
that was not a good movie.
No, it was not. He did Godzilla King of the Monsters. Um, done a bunch
And
of
the
stuff
Happy
that I
Death
never heard
Day.
of. Yeah.
The Happy Death Days. Wow, cool.
He did 10
Awesome.
Cloverfield Lane.
Oh, that's such a good
So
movie.
he's apparently the go-to Cloverfield director.
Yeah, it seems like it.
Musical director, rather.
Yeah.
And Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Black Mirror, the Snowpiercer TV show. Yeah.
Oh, that infamous Snowpiercer TV show.
Yeah. So yeah, I just think the music's great. It works really well. It's objectively beautiful.
And of course, God of War 2 Ragnarok is coming out next year, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
They've just announced, a little bit disappointed that they've just announced it's going to be on PS4 as well as PS5. I'm a little bit bummed at that. Like I really am curious what like a fully designed for PS5 from the ground up version of this game would have been. But I understand why they're doing it. It's because they're terrible PS5 shortages and no one has them. So if they're going to spend $150 million making this game, they want to make sure the most amount of people possible can buy it. But a little disappointed in that.
Yeah, I feel you. Because what's funny is if it had been PS5 only, there's a good chance that I might have had to buy a PS5.
My thing is like, I don't have one yet. I haven't really been trying that hard to get one because I don't really have time to play video games very much right now. But man, I'm definitely not playing this on a last gen console. Like I'm definitely going to get the highest fidelity version possible when it comes out.
I guess I haven't searched my soul for the answer to that question yet.
Matt,
I guess
you played it on the hardest difficulty. Come on.
Yeah, but those PS5s are not cheap. But also, a man must indulge himself from time to time. Am I wrong?
You work hard. You don't have too many video games you play. You gotta splurge.
Okay, all right.
Sometimes PS5's for everyone.
Well, you've convinced me.
I'm curious. I think maybe the way to end this conversation is, I mean, I think of a game like The Last of Us, which I don't believe you've played.
I've played a bit of it actually. I played like maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours of The Last of Us.
I really like, so from a gameplay perspective, very different game. I don't think you're going to get into the gameplay of that game near as much as you got into the gameplay of this game. But I do think there's something to be said for the story that's being told in that game that I think it would really appeal to you.
Mm-hmm.
So I would recommend giving that a shot after you finished your latest replay of God of War.
Yeah. I mean, I got far, and I was playing with a friend. We got far enough where I think I get it. But I mean, the combat is totally different. So
it's the Naughty Dog combat, which like I've always loved the Uncharted games. I think those are so much fun. It's like playing Indiana Jones, and I love it. But it's a different animal for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'll just comment, like it already had some of those moments where you're like, this is bullshit. There's no way he would have seen me, and you're like, and you feel mad that you died instead of just feeling like, yeah, well, I screwed up,
See, it's so funny because The Last of Us is my God of War in this regard, because I play those. I have beaten all the Uncharted's and both Last of Us on the hardest difficulty in those games, which it's a fucking pain in the ass. It's so hard. It's basically you one hit and you're dead.
Okay. I can see the appeal though. Like anything involving guns where you get shot a bunch of times and then heal yourself by wrapping a bandage around your arm. That always kind of breaks me out of things. But
and the flow of combat for me is the point where like every combat kind of starts off similar, where like you have the opening stealth section where you're starting off, no one knows where you are, and you're trying like, you know, you're going to get spotted eventually. You just know it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So you're trying to take out as many people as you can before the inevitable, oops, I fucked up. And now let's rip this shit open.
Yeah.
And it's like this frantic changing of weapons and like healing yourself and like making new arrows as people surround you. And it's just like, I don't know, it's a very enjoyable combat style for me. I really like it. And also, like, the trick to making me do hard things in video games is to give me checkpoints often. Because, like, if I'm stuck on a thing and I have to run all the way back to do it again and it takes 30 minutes to do that, I'm gonna give up and be frustrated. But like, if I am in an encounter with 10 different dudes, even if I'm at like the last dude when I fuck up and die, like, I'm much more likely to dive back into that and try again. Like, this is why Dark Souls is just not the game for me, because I just like fuck everything up. It takes 20 minutes to get down to the boss. I fuck up on the boss and then I gotta run and fight all the way. I don't want to do that again. Fuck it. No.
Yeah, I think God of War had what felt to me like just the right amount of checkpoints where it basically resets you back to the beginning of whatever big encounter you're facing. And
yeah, especially if it's a boss, like, it's just going to dump you right back at the beginning of that fight.
And it never, one cool thing I appreciate is it never makes you like reopen chests. If you open a chest and then you die, you already open that chest is open, that thing is in your inventory, because the game knows there's no fucking reason to make the player reopen the chest again. They already know what's in there. That's a waste of time. It's annoying.
Yeah. Imagine having to open that chest 30 times.
Yeah.
Because you're stuck on a particularly hard section.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's quality of life choices in design. I'm really big fan. Big fan.
Me too.
All right. Anything else you wanted to say about God of War? This is your moment. This is your last moment to get your final words in, Matt.
I just think that I highly recommend it to anyone who is a gamer or even not a gamer, I would say, because it's actually a story about a man and his son carrying the mom/wife's ashes to a mountain to honor her life, which happens to also have parts where you have to chop an ogre in the mouth with an axe and then smash it with a giant boulder.
Which, I mean, who hasn't experienced that?
Which really, it's got something for everyone, is what I'm saying.
Isn't life just one big chopping an ogre in the mouth with an axe?
I kind of wish there were more ogres in real life.
Okay, this is going a place that I did not think it was going to go.
Just like, when you're walking around, like when you're taking your kids on a hike or something, you're like, what am I here for even? Like, there's really no danger. I wish there was some danger that I could protect them from.
Okay, I feel like you're not thinking this through. You don't have a magic axe that comes back to your hand when you press a button.
Well, in this scenario, I would have a magic axe.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So in this world,
I guess I didn't say that.
There is both ogres and Leviathan axes.
Well, I feel like if there were ogres, then like we would get something to kind of even it out.
Does everyone have a Leviathan axe in this fantasy of yours? Or are they just like flying around the forest constantly?
No, just me, obviously.
Just you? Okay.
Yeah. I think every father fantasizes about defending his children from ogres, though. So I don't really feel like this is unusual. You're trying to make me feel weird about it, but it's not working. This is just This is a totally normal thing to happen, and you'll get there. I promise. Oh
yeah, I have not gotten to the defending my child from ogres phase of parenthood yet. No. I can't wait.
Yeah,
it's gonna be fun.
Yep.
I do call him boy quite a bit though.
Good.
Yeah, one thing we didn't talk about was the voice acting, which is excellent.
Yes, flawless.
Yeah, the guy who plays Kratos is the guy who played Teal'c in Stargate SG-1, and he's perfect for the role. Absolutely perfect.
And I think the kid does an amazing job. Like there's like zero like takes in the whole thing where you're like, yeah, the kid could have done that better. It's like, no, he nails it. Absolutely nails it.
Which is very rare when it comes to kids.
Exactly. Yeah.
Video games.
Yep.
All right. That's it for God of War. Out on PlayStation 4 now.
Your local PlayStation 4 game dealer.
Yeah. Doof. All right, Matt, let's wrap this whole episode up by talking about freedom. And the world and America and the fact that it's been 25 years since Independence Day came out. 1996. We were 11 years old, which means the movie hit at the literal perfect age for us. This movie was literally made for me.
It's true. I read the novelization of this movie when it came out.
That's amazing.
That's where I was. I was gonna say that I can't believe it's 25 years old, but then I just like picture what Jeff Goldblum and Will Smith look like now. I'm like, oh yeah, now I can buy 25 years has passed.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, this is first of all, this is a movie that is really good actually and has held up remarkably well. But I think it's also a really important like blockbuster. Like you think of the best blockbusters of the 90s, and I think Jurassic Park is the one that jumps into everyone's head. And that's a very good movie. But this, I think, is the more influential one in the long term. I think this movie changed the way blockbusters were made in Hollywood for a long time after it.
Yeah.
Like, not just the fact that it's a disaster movie, but it's a disaster movie in which you get one really big star in Will Smith, and you get this really, really big, broad cast of characters, and you spend the first 45 minutes of your movie really defining who these people are. And then like the humor, like I think there's a lot of like MCU-esque humor in this movie, I think.
Sure.
Am I way off base with that?
I get what you mean. I mean, it's kind of more of a feeling where it's I think it's a tone thing.
Sure.
I think it's going for a certain tone where it's like world-ending stakes, but we're not gonna take ourselves too seriously.
Yeah.
Like somehow the guy is flying his jet into the laser thingy, into the blue laser shooting at the sky at the end, which is very Marvel. Feels, like fun. Like part of you is sad, but part of you is like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Like it never takes it into like a maudlin direction, or it doesn't linger there too long. I guess it kind of does go there when like the president's wife dies. But it's a very interesting movie because like it's sort of a mess. Like it's sort of an incredibly overcomplicated plot with like way too many characters. But it like that's the thing, is it works for me. Like I think it nails the specific through lines that it needs to nail, and then everything else is just kind of a good amount of background texture. I think it is really good. It's just I actually sort of said that in reaction to criticisms I've heard where people have said like it's overstuffed, and I'm like, well, I mean that's a judgment call. I think it works actually.
I mean it's big. Like it's big in every way, in budget, in scope, in cast size. It's big. Like I think it's kind of remarkable. Will Smith is not actually in this movie that much because there's so many other characters. But like I just love like the trajectory of the movie is you kind of start with Will Smith and Jeff Goldblum on the other side of the world, literally on the other side of the country, and they like inevitably are just going to join together and meet in the climax of the movie. It just like it feels perfect to me. And I don't think there's a better blockbuster that exists outside of the back-to-back sequence of when the aliens attack and blow up all the cities for the first time, all the way through the moment of the first counterattack where Will Smith in his fighter with Harry Connick Jr. like goes and fights the aliens for the first time. Like the moment where Jeff Goldblum says time's up when his satellite thing is signal, and then we get to see all the cities blow up in this huge crazy sequence, all the way to the moment that Will Smith punches the alien in the face. Like that's the best blockbuster that has ever existed in the world. Like just like that. It's huge. It's like jaw dropping. Like I just remember the first time I saw all these buildings blow up. The White House blows up. The Empire State Building. It's incredible.
I always remember that. I'm pretty sure that the place where they decide to test firing a nuclear missile at the aliens is Houston.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, fuck you. Because
bye Houston.
I'm from there. But no, I agree. Like, especially as an 11-year-old, but I think it even works now. That whole sequence, and just, it's just a fun, like this is something that was actually really emphasized in the novelization, is like the really playing with the idea of like Area 51 is real and aliens are real, and we're gonna steal the aliens' technology. Like think about what what an actually minor part of the story that is, and what a
Yeah.
crazy fun idea it is that like
Yeah.
Area 51 is real. They have an alien. Um, they we see the dead alien bodies. We see the spaceship. They're trying to reverse engineer the spaceship. They successfully reverse engineer the spaceship, use it to fly up to the mothership and give it a computer virus. Like it's insane.
Yeah.
It's so like creative and like all that stuff I just said. I feel like that's like too. Yes, that's like too cerebral somehow now. even though at the time it's obviously silly and goofy.
Has there ever been a greater moment for computer viruses in cinema than this movie? Like this is peak computer virus.
Uh-huh. Oh God, no, I think you're right.
I think like this the wild thing. I distinctly remember the experience of watching this movie because like you're sitting in this movie and it's really literally like 45 minutes before the ships start blowing anything up. It's like this long, slow, kind of patient rollout of and build of this tension. And then I just remember being in my seat when the fighter pilots start fighting the alien fighter pilots. And then like the realization that, oh fuck, this is a different it has gone into a whole different kind of movie now. This is like a airplane dogfight movie.
Yeah.
And I was just so there for it. Like
Yeah.
it just and then it shifts again and it shifts again and it's doing all these things and it's doing them well. Like has Roland Emmerich made a better movie?
I mean, maybe I don't know. I doubt it.
I mean, I don't think so. I don't think so.
No, it's just talking about the dog fighting part. Like I think the beginning of the movie is sort of a masterclass in like making it feel like there's just no chance at winning. Like the ships are invincible. They're inconceivable destructive, and then the fighters come out, and the fighters even have their own like personal shields.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my god, we're just totally like what are they gonna do? What there's nothing they can do, and it's just which makes it of course all the more satisfying when they figure it out.
And then poor Harry Connick Jr.
Yeah,
Jimmy, put your mask back on.
Yeah,
Jimmy. Is this like Apex Will Smith? Like is this his biggest movie, or is that Men in Black? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on like what you think Will Smith is as a cultural figure, because
okay, fair.
He definitely made a bunch of poor choices later in his career, and so I mean, I'm pretty sure Bad Boys falls after this, right?
Bad Boys 2.
Bad Boys 2 does. Yeah, see, I don't actually remember the sequencing of his career, but I mean, in terms of like his imprint on my life, I think it's fair to say that this is the climax. I really liked Men in Black also, though. So
yeah, I mean, like look at this run he had. Bad Boys 95, Independence Day 96, Men in Black 97, Enemy of the State 98, and then Wild Wild West 99, which is like the beginning of wait, he made bad movies.
Yeah. Oh, I really liked Enemy of the State. Actually, I forgot about that movie. That's a movie that I used to just watch over and over for some reason. I don't know.
It's a good movie. Yeah. It's just very like if you look at like it on a list of Bad Boys, Men in Black, Independence Day, it just feels like the outlier of that.
Yeah. It was kind of like a serious thriller, and then what happened is he made the decision not to be Neo in the Matrix, and then he never made any more good decisions after that.
Biggest mistake of his life. Yeah. So did you ever see the sequel? Did you see Independence Day Resurgence or whatever it's called?
No.
How do you make this movie and don't have Will Smith in it? Right?
Yeah. I mean, it's stupid.
Shouldn't
have made it.
But he wanted $50 million. And they said no. Pay the man. Pay him $50 million. Like there's no, that movie bombed. It didn't do well.
Yeah.
I feel like you get Will Smith in Independence Day, it's gonna make more than $50 million more than it would. Like you're gonna get your money back, is what I'm saying. If you pay him $50 million, your movie's probably gonna do $100 million better than it would have without him in it.
Yeah, I mean
that's all I'm saying.
I mean, there's a reasonable chance that I would have gone to see it if it had Will Smith.
100%. I didn't go see it. I would 100% have done it if you told me Will Smith Independence Day sequel. I mean, the reason I didn't go see it is because you told me Independence Day sequel, no Will Smith. And I said, oh, okay, pass then.
Yeah. I mean, I think also it just ended up just objectively not being very good. So
no, I eventually did see it on home video, and it was bad. It was real bad.
Yeah. Oh well.
But that is Independence Day. Happy 25th birthday, Independence Day. What a movie.
Yeah. Thank you.
I watched that movie so many times.
Me too. Yeah. I need to show it to my kids. I think they might have seen it, but I need to show it to them again because we just had 4th of July. So we're celebrating.
Yeah, there you go. I watched a movie that came out this weekend that was trying to be like an Independence Day, sort of. Have you heard of the Tomorrow War?
I've heard of it. It looks utterly uninspired from the trailer, but what do you think?
I mean, here's the weird thing about this movie. First of all, it's not very good. It's kind of trying to do an Edge of Tomorrow-esque thing with some Independence Day type things in it. And it's weird because a lot of the emotional beats in this movie work really well on me. But the movie doesn't make any fucking sense. And it's like the logic of the movie, like I'm not a big plot hole person.
Right.
Like I hate that. I hate that phrase. I hate that I just said it out loud.
You'll just go along with the story if it convinces you dramatically, even though maybe certain things don't make sense. Usually,
none of this fucking story makes any sense, and I won't spoil it for you. But like the basic concept is, in the future, in 2051, the Earth is on its last leg because they're fighting a war against some alien creatures, and so they come back in time to 2021, and they say, we need some recruits to help fight in our war because we're out of people because like 7.5 billion people are dead, so we need people to help fight in our future war, and we can transport you back into the future to help us fight our war. And you're just sitting here like, well, that doesn't make any fucking sense.
Wait, as you were explaining that, I was like, wait. I mean, do they address the obvious elephant in the room of like, why don't you just do something in 2021 to
prevent the war? Maybe. No, they don't. I mean, the one thing they say about the time travel is in this world, time is a river. And there are 2 rafts on the river, one in 2021, one in 2051, and they're both moving down the river. So you can hop back and forth between those 2 time periods, but time is still moving forward. So it's not like they can go back to whenever they want. They only have this one wormhole to this one place.
So it's just another dimension.
Basically, it doesn't make any sense. The whole thing is all governments of planet Earth in 2021 agree to a worldwide draft to send people to the future to help fight in this war. And you're just like, that doesn't make any sense.
Especially when it's not even the future. It's actually just another dimension. And then what if, and then if you know that the aliens are coming to your world,
couldn't you do something to stop them?
Yeah, you should be keeping your resources. Sorry, future guys, you're boned. Our timeline, our world line is going to be fine, though. In fact, why don't y'all just go ahead and destroy this little wormhole thing you built so the aliens can't come back in time to get us, you idiots.
I love how you haven't even seen this movie and you're asking all the questions that I thought in my head, because I'm just like the movie, that's the frustrating part is I think like there's a lot of emotional stuff between Chris Pratt and his daughter in this movie that I think is really well done, and like it got to me in moments, and like also Chris Pratt and his father, speaking of God of War and family relationships and how you pass on the broken relationships down from one level to the other. There's a lot of good stuff in there around that emotional stuff, but it's all predicated on a concept that just doesn't make any fucking sense. And like actively is trying to tell you, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Like, okay, this is, I guess, minor spoilers. Not that you care, but their tour of duty in the future is 7 days. For I don't know. I don't know why it's 7
dramatic.
days.
Okay, yeah.
It's only 7 days, and they automatically go back in time at the end of their 7 days. Like it just they have a thing on their arm, and after 7 days is up, they automatically go back. Whatever.
Okay.
They recruit not just from military, but like from anyone. It's like it's a worldwide draft. Anyone's eligible. I think the only requirement is you have to be dead in that future already,
Uh-huh.
because there can't be more than one of you that exist in the same place.
For some reason, of course.
So,
Yeah.
'cause they just say,
More,
they just yada yada it.
whatever. Yeah, sure.
But they don't train any of these people to do anything. They don't train them in guns or basic training or anything. And you're just like, why wouldn't you do that?
It's a commentary on the nonsensical wars that we send our people into, or some shit like that.
Yes. I'm just like there's his buddy character is I forget the actor's name, but I really love him. But he's like playing kind of a goofy comedic relief guy who's like a scientist and doesn't understand any of this stuff. And of course, Chris Pratt is playing a military guy who knows everything because he's a military guy. And
which I still can't accept Chris Pratt as tough, hard ass military guy. Like,
I understand.
They still haven't made it work for me, but sorry, go ahead.
But why don't you train them? Like, this is not going to be the basic training you think it is. Like, you're not going to have to do any laps or push-ups or learn how to shoot. And I'm like, okay, so you're really just throwing bodies at the problem now. Like, that you don't give a shit about them at all. You're just like, we need a piece of meat to hold a gun so the alien can kill them while we're doing something else. It's just, it doesn't make any fucking sense.
A piece of meat which is now not going to be around on Earth when the aliens arrive.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Is there a scene in which they like come back and say, hey, we want to come back to talk to you about like the information we have about like when they show up and like where they come from, and like we can start making plans.
Yeah. Hey, maybe y'all should be sending your futuristic weapons back in time, instead of us sending our useless people forward in time. What the fuck, Scott? This sounds so stupid. I want to watch it now just to be mad at it.
Go for it. I mean, the greatest irony of this movie is this should have been a movie that was in a giant theater, like an IMAX screen. Like, it's the best version of watching this movie is seeing it on a big screen, and because it's big, it's it's like explosive. The action sequences are pretty good. I guess it's a movie that needs to be seen in a theater, and it's an Amazon movie, so it's just on Prime, and everyone's gonna watch it on their TVs, and it's just like, it's like, imagine watching Independence Day for the first time on your TV, like, and that's a better movie, but like it's a movie that needs to be seen in the theater, and so you're already impatient with it when you're like, this is fucking stupid, but that's the Tomorrow War.
Awesome. Can't wait to watch it. What is it rated?
It's got to be PG-13. Okay. I don't actually know.
All right. Maybe
there's no. Yeah, maybe, it's got to.
Yeah, maybe I can watch it with my kids, and we can all laugh at how stupid it is together.
You can explain to them, here's how you write things.
I'll pose it as a test. I'll be like, hey guys, does this make sense? And then I'll see what they say. I'll see if my small children can figure out how stupid your plot is. Yeah, all right.
All right. So that's it for me. No more talking about the Tomorrow War ever again. And that's all we had for you guys this week. So if you have any opinions on God of War, I'm sure you do, or on Independence Day, or if you saw Tomorrow War and want to let us know what you thought of it, you can reach out to us via email at doofmedia@gmail.com or over on our Twitter account at doofmedia.
Yeah, if you're not already subscribed to the Doofcast, we encourage you to subscribe and ensure you never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found.
You can find this and all of our shows over at our website, doofmedia.com. And if you like what we do here and want to support us, consider becoming a patron of Doof Media. Head on over to patreon.com/doofmedia, pledge at the Doof Troop level or above, and you will get access to a bunch of bonus podcasts, including this week's Freeman Bros, which will see me, Matt, and his brother Daniel talk about video games. So if you liked this discussion about this game, there's more of it over there.
Yep. Also, please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. Each review helps us get more exposure and introduces new people to the content that we make here.
Matt, we've actually got a new review. Did you know that?
No.
Because I didn't tell you. Because right now I'm just filling time as I open up my app to read the new review.
I love new reviews, and we read them on the show when we get them.
Yes, we have a 5-star review from Jas Photo who says, "A can't miss podcast. Great show. I'll listen to Scott and Matt talk about the grass growing. They make everything to discuss fun and interesting. This is a can't miss podcast if you love movies, TV, and books. So well done. Thanks, guys." Well, thanks, Jas Photo.
Yeah. Next week we're going to be talking about grass growing, so that's really
It's convenient,
really
yeah.
timely.
Next week we are not talking about grass growing. We are continuing our Deconstructing Verbinski series. We're going to be taking another look at his film, I believe his 8th film, Rango, one of my favorite movies that we've talked about on the show. So I'm very excited to revisit this movie.
Me too. Revisit it with a little different focus.
Yeah, absolutely. So check back next week as we talk about Rango. We'll see you then.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.